Next, we have Animal Control. Lieutenant Hill.
Good morning.
Morning.
Proposals we could give to all the commissioners and one for the city manager also.
County manager.
We're changing.
Sorry, county manager.
He recognizes error. If it was the city, he wouldn't even be here.
Right, we,
right.
we should save one of these for the city. I agree with you. Get an extra copy.
We'll share.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, thank you for seeing us. I'm Lieutenant Hill, Unit Commander for Animal Control. To my right is Jody Lewis. She is the shelter supervisor. And to my left is an Animal Control Officer, Christina Southern. Christina has taken on a strong leadership role for the animal control officers on the street. So they're here representing. The proposal I have in front of you, if you notice on the decision package, we have a request for one officer, animal control officer supervisor. And we also have two officers that I'm requesting on the street also, animal control officers, and then two caretakers at the shelter. Understand that animal control, two vital roles at the shelter and on the street, play completely different roles. But one feeds off the other pretty much as far as is how we operate. Understand that the staff at animal control, the animal control officers, do not have a direct line supervisor. They don't have it. I have 5 officers out there operating. And for times like this, I'm here where I'm in a meeting. There's no supervision of them right now. That needs to change. Okay? When most of the time I'm on the radio listening to them, supervising everything they do. Christina's taken on, that role to assist greatly with that. But also, too, that's going to take time from her being on the street where we need her to be. So this position is vital, and of course the other two. But reason why I'm asking for these this increase, if you look at the proposal, I kind of mirrored us off of Columbus, the city of Columbus, Muskogee County. I took Christina and Jody. We went to Muskogee County and visited the Columbus Animal Control Shelter and met with Drell Short. We spent the day there. If you look at the back page, we'll kind of get a synopsis of what Columbus offers, of the proposal that I gave you, and pretty much what we have. Columbus, square miles, they have half the square miles that we have in our county. As far as their population, we're about 80,000 more than what they have. If you look at the kennels that they operate with, less than half of what we have. But their staff at the shelter is pretty much equivalent to what we have now. If you look at the officers on the street, they're well above and beyond us. And with that being said, I'm asking for one supervisor and then 2 more officers on the street, and at the shelter 2 more. So that's going to give me a total more of 5. What y'all need to understand is our operations right now, we're struggling to meet the demand. Yesterday, just to give you an example, 2 officers on the street, 15 calls per officer. About 30 calls yesterday. 10 calls were left over from yesterday to today. We had no choice. I've got to send them home. They can't work all day and all night. It can't happen. So with that being said, that kind of gives you an idea. Now, Mondays are usually bad, but still, this is transpiring. And of course, each of you know, and you've seen, your constituents have made complaints to you. These complaints about animal control is slow to respond. Animal control, I tried to call the shelter and couldn't get through. Folks, this is legitimate complaints. I'm in my office during the mornings. They're busy in the shelter cleaning. I have 5 people for that entire shelter. Okay, somebody's got to be off. Somebody's going to be on vacation. And somebody's going to be sick. So I'm going to have 1 or 2 people there. That's it, cleaning that entire shelter. of all these kennels in Jody. So I'm answering the phone still rings. Christina might grab the phone still rings. My secretary's got it. The phone is still ringing. We take over 200 calls every day at that shelter. And people are, I couldn't get through. Well, I try to explain that to them. You know, and as far as on the street, it's the same complaints. It's, you know, I've got this animal in my trap. I've called for the officer. It's been several hours. Well, all those other calls stacked before them, they all have the same issues. And we have to do one at a time. So, you know, with that being said, animal control is a fixable product for the community. I can do this. I've been put there to fix this, okay? At this point, I've made it as efficient as I can. It cannot be done any better without more personnel. It can't. And I bring that to y'all.
Commissioner Stone, Commissioner Center, Commissioner Brady.
Thank you, and thank you all for what you do. I do have a question, though, in looking at your comparison of Muskogee County to Chatham County. The intake of dogs was over 4,000, and they only have, and the dog runs 52 indoor. We're taking in about a little more than half of that, and we have a lot more dog kennels. So what do you attribute the differential? I mean, are we housing animals longer
No, ma'am.
than Muskogee?
No, I mean, pretty much, and understand for us what happens with us in Muskogee, too. If you look below the intake of cats, I noted that Columbus allows other counties to bring the animals in that need to be euthanized. So they deal with a larger volume. They actually have a facility that's next to them that they work with. They actually have 2 dedicated veterinarians that are doing surgeries and euthanizing for them. So the way they're set up is much more different. So they're bringing in more animals, not necessarily going into their kennels. And then 2, the biggest thing for us is like what happened recently in a case at a location. We had 20 animals that we've got to hold on to that have been neglected in a cruelty case. One home. So for us, and I don't know why, but recently this has been occurring a lot. We've been dealing with large volume of animals from just one location. So understand with those 20 animals, until this case is disclosed, we have to house them. And we have to give them care.
And I understand that, and I hope and pray that that's a rather unique situation. My concern is in looking at the comparison of numbers and how long are we just not in court cases, ones that you're holding for court, how long, an average, are we keeping the animals there?
At a minimum is 5 days.
I understand, but
What we look at is,
I'm talking about
right,
the average.
Rules versus actual.
right.
Right.
On the average, Jody?
I try not to go over 21 days. That gives them 14 days on the adoption floor, which is within guidelines. We have we have a vet who comes in 2 full days a week.
And the reason I ask that, historically, the ordinance was, I think, 2 or 3 days, and then it was changed to 5. And my concern is, as much as I want as many animals placed in adoption as possible, is that we're holding these animals around 20-something days. If the owner is going to claim them, usually they're going to claim them before 20-something days. So these animals that we're holding, court cases excluded, these animals are ones that I'm assuming we're hoping to put up for adoption. Is that
Highly
correct?
adoptable, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I mean, I think that's wonderful, but the bottom line is I don't know if we can afford it. That's my concern. And I'm an animal lover. I have more than I need. But when we're trying to look at budgets and numbers, if keeping animals 20-something days, if the ordinance is 5, I know that there are a lot of adoption agencies out there, the Humane Society, Save a Life, other adoption agencies, and I believe there's one that's incorporated within animal control, or it used to be. The point is, can we rely on some of these other agencies to help us and not put this burden on the taxpayer, would be my question.
Financially, put the burden on them.
Yes.
They do give donations, but you can't rely on.
No. I mean, can we work more closely with getting these animals to these agencies in a quicker manner? I mean, if we're only required by law to hold them for 5 days, after the 6th or 7th day, and it's obvious that the owner isn't interested in coming and picking up their pet, which is a terrible thing, can we more expeditiously get them to an adoption agency that can help them be adopted rather than holding them in the Chatham County facility, which is not set up to be an adoption facility? That's just my question.
Yeah, Commissioner, I know for Jody, and I know Christina also assist, with the animals that come in after that 5 days, even before the 5 days, if we see foreseeable adoptable animal, all the adoptable animals, they're pushing out on social media. They're talking, today, the Humane Society in Atlanta, out of Alpharetta, they're picking up 25 dogs.
Good.
So, I mean, that's today. Humane Society, on our property, they're taking animals. Other rescues, they're still pulling from us. Now, also, too, we're doing adoptions on site. So now we're creating more revenue at the shelter that we didn't do before. So a lot of these things are kind of playing out right now, but then again, it goes back to our staff level. What can we do and what can't we do? Right now, it's just priorities. That's what we're trying to do.
Those are just some questions that I had. I mean, I think 22 days is a lot of responsibility placed on animal control. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Center?
Thank you. And again, I don't know who directly to direct this question to, so maybe the county manager and the county chairman, you can help me. I'm looking at the organizational chart. We share a police department with the city, but it says animal control is one of our departments. How does this relate to our relationship with the city on the police department? And are we funding this 100%? Does the city fund it also?
No, it's funded totally.
I believe the salary is paid by the city, and the
Right.
county funds the operation in the building.
It's 100% county.
100%.
Yeah.
100% from the county. So there's no city contribution on this at all, but yet we serve all municipalities. It's a county function, correct?
We do.
And you're wearing a Savannah Chatham
I think there's one municipalities without animal control, isn't it?
Other than Tybee.
Tybee.
Right.
All right. But you are part of the Savannah Chatham County Police Department.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Brady and Commissioner Farrell.
Hi. And I think Commissioner Center brings up a very valid point. Early on in this year, I asked for the numbers for the municipalities, versus unincorporated county, and most of the work that's being done by animal control, in fact, is being done in the municipalities and not based in unincorporated county. And this is an initiative that we have fully funded for years, to my knowledge. Animals are near and dear to my heart. They're probably going to roll their eyes at me a little bit about this, because I think you are underfunded. When you're only open from 1 to 5, and I've been a commissioner that sat out in front of your gate and can't get in when I'm trying to help somebody. And I'm a commissioner that has called after 1 o'clock, and the calls are being put into the 911 system, for God's sake. And I kept saying, this is not an emergency. After the 5th call, I finally just said, okay, this is an emergency. I didn't know what to do. I felt terrible saying it was an emergency going through 911. There's so many issues, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but I don't know the history other than the county built a state-of-the-art facility. I have no idea why they built this really, really, really nice facility and then won't staff it at the level to properly deal with the animals in Chatham County. Now, I heard what Commissioner Stone said about how many days you keep them. Most of this budget request is actually for officers and not for assistants in the facility. I want to put that out there because that might be some way that we could try to at least induce some additional funding into animal control. I do believe that it needs to be negotiated with the city of Savannah in reference to our intergovernmental agreement, in reference to Savannah Metro Police Department. I think they need to share part of this burden. And as far as, has there ever been any conversation with the Humane Society being right there, is trying to come up with some type of joint relationship with the Humane Society to help some of your assistant issues over there in the kennel itself, and help and possibly do some type of management contract with the Humane Society? I mean, the bottom line is when you've got a animal control center who is only open from 1 to 5, you're sending out Savannah Metro police officers who are supposed to be crime fighters. 5 of them were in my neighborhood. Y'all have heard this story, chasing a deer. I'm not a deer, a goat. I mean, for hours on a Saturday. 5 Metro police officers. Unacceptable. I support it. I do not support raising taxes in order to make this happen, but I think there is something that we need to do in reference to managing animal control, going to the city of Savannah, having them pay for their burden on animal control, and also working with the Humane Society in some type of management contract to help y'all out.
If I could, you brought up a few points. If I could highlight those. Commissioner, the one thing is, I looked at some figures from 2000 to now on the census. Right now, our population growth for our entire county is 20% larger. Now, I know that animal control has not had an increase in staff, other than 1 personnel for the shelter that was created in 2010. But going before 2000, in the early 90s, I found a memo from a Lieutenant Kitchell that used to be the commander, asking for very same thing that I'm asking for. But also on that, the shelter was built larger, a new shelter, in 2010. The size of that shelter compared to the old shelter is 4 times the size. 4 times the size. And they gave us 1. Still not enough. And then 2, on the numbers that you talked about the police, I have here that I printed out. This is the animal control officers. This is about 2 inches thick, 277 pages, 8,500 calls. On each page is over 20 to 25 calls. Here is the police. 5,000, over 5,000 calls of animal related they wrote because these guys were busy. And girl.
I have 2 more questions to follow up on. In Muskogee County and Columbus, I'm sorry.
We've got Commissioner Farrell is waiting with additional questions.
Oh, okay, well then I'll come back.
And then we'll get back to you. Then Commissioner Kicklighter has a question.
Yeah, that's, you'd mentioned that you've got 5 officers and you're getting more calls. It was my understanding over 10 years ago when we merged these 2 departments, Chatham County Police, Savannah Police. One of the concepts was that where the big problems were, that they would pull officers and saturate and solve the problems. Sounds like there are times of the day when animal control is overwhelmed. Where's the backup? Where's the Metro backup? You got 5 fully funded from the county, but we also fund part of the Metro Police Department, and the city of Savannah funds part of it. Where's the backup?
Well,
I know.
the
I know it's a
police-
legitimate question, but I don't think it's legitimate for the lieutenant.
Well, who would answer that?
Well, you've got the chief sitting in the audience, but we hadn't got to her
Bring the
yet.
chief up.
That's really above our pay grade, really. You know, the officers, as the lieutenant just indicated to you, they are responding to crimes, calls for services for crime issues. And when necessary, they support these officers and chasing animals, as Commissioner Brady indicated. We would rather them not be spending their time chasing after horses and goats and cows and all those types of animals. But, when we went into this and the agreement, the county funded 100%, and the city reimbursed for the staffing, and that's pretty much where we are. There's not been a change at all in that agreement.
And let me just say, but let's not talk about reimbursement rates and everything else, because I think what happens is that unless you're deep in the weeds as a budget analyst, you really don't understand the reimbursement rate. The county pays 100% of it, period.
Yes.
So again, my question, if you've got 5 officers that are dedicated and you've got hundreds and hundreds of Metro officers on
Streets.
the streets,
I
And
think
you-
this
and you're
Commissioner
in a-
Farrell wanted to know.
and you're in a pinch,
Yeah.
where's the backup?
And again, the officers, if needed, they are called for services to assist.
So there is backup.
If I may, on that, Commissioner Farrell?
Yeah.
As being an officer out on the street, there are times that we do have to call for a Metro officer, whether it's I have to get in a house because I have 20 severely neglected animals, and I do need a post-certified officer at that point in time. But your officers, your police officers that are showing up through the academy are not taught animal handling. They're not taught our ordinances, or the county, knowing Thunderbolt's ordinances vary from, Garden City's vary from the county, vary from the city. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, because the police department is also short, those officers that are responding out don't have the training that we need as animal control officers to have that backup. So sometimes, as in yesterday, removing animals from a severely neglected situation, I had to call for another animal control officer to come out there and assist me along with a Metro officer. So now I have 2 animal control officers that are tied up and a Metro police officer on scene as well. Those officers aren't experienced in the animal handling, dog bite prevention, things along those lines that come into play with our training when we go through specific animal control training.
Is there any synergies with the K-9 unit in the sheriff's department? Is there any cross-pollination between these? Are we all in silos and we can only do one small thing? Or
Those
can we?
K-9 officers, commissioners are trained for specific reasons within the sheriff department. It may be bomb technicians that they're assisting. It could be searching for weapons. They're not trained in the same arena as the animal control officers are. So to answer your question, there is no cross-training there.
Well,
But
as a manager of the county, I would suggest that more cross-training is looked at by supervisors so that you have a wider pool of available talent to handle different situations, so that if you need to, you got a big case of 20-something dogs and you need extra officers, that you've got some that you can use for a couple of hours. I'm sure there's not actively fighting crime every minute of every shift, so there's probably some way to work the synergy. But if your talent pool is very narrowly defined, and rather than being more cross-trained in other specialties, areas of the law, then you limit, you're limiting your effectiveness with your manpower, in my personal opinion.
And again, you are asking.
that was a statement, I think, Chief.
Okay, sure.
And we got Commissioner Kicklighter,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and then Commissioner Brady, then Commissioner Center.
To answer a question about the history, historically speaking, prior to Savannah actually taking over the oversight of animal control only picked up dogs and cats,
Right.
period.
Yeah.
Anything other than that was picked up by an outside hired private firm of, whatever.
That's right.
Also, as far as to answer the historical question about why it was actually built, the county commission realized back when it put it on the agenda to build this nice facility, put it on the up for splosh vote, that we wanted to have a more humane place for the dogs and cats to actually live. But we also realized that we unfortunately had the duty of trying to do this for the least amount of money. And we realized that we were having to put animals to sleep and having to actually put them to sleep. So what we wanted to do was provide a much more humane way for the animals to be put to sleep. So they wound up with a nicer place for the animals to actually live out their days, and they also have a much more humane way to actually die. That was the intent. It was not to blow a budget completely up and out of the water. I mean, it was those two simple things, knowing that we, unfortunately, are the ones that have to put the animals to death when they're not adopted out. We wanted to give them a more humane way to go. And I will ask this. I'm wondering if you've ever considered, because there are so many animal lovers out there, it's all over Facebook, people share this, share that. Have you ever thought, there's a lot of people out there, which y'all know this, that really care about the animals. I think within a flash, you could train a huge group of volunteers and teach them what they need to do. You could train each one of them, and you could have a call-out list when you have non-aggressive animals out there that needs picking up. I would imagine half your calls is just stray dog running here or there that's not the aggressive animal that these volunteers would gladly go pick up and bring to the shelter. And I really hope that if you have not considered it, that y'all would, because again, there's plenty of people out there that would volunteer and do this for free. And I think that could eliminate the need where the 5 officers available could primarily be working on the aggressive animals. So have y'all thought of doing that?
We do think that would be a liability,
Yeah.
because you don't know it.
What you're asking county employees to set policy and to establish a new way of doing business, and that's not within their scope of work. You could certainly propose such a program at some future date.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we could do is,
We still have
Just-
questions from members of the commission I would like to get to, rather than trying to solve it here.
yeah, because we can still renegotiate the agreement, obviously. That's a point well made and taken. But the other is to evaluate this situation. I mean, there are national organizations that can come in and actually do an evaluation because it's a very emotional issue. But give us some background, give us some evidence to actually look at changing our policies, look at how the municipalities are involved, and make it less of an emotional issue and make it a business issue.
Again, we can't solve it here today. Today is a budget hearing.
We're being asked to use a lot of money to solve the problem, so I appreciate hearing from these other
Yeah.
sources of ideas.
Yeah, no.
And Commissioner Brady and Commissioner Sinner.
In Columbus, Muskogee County, that animal control is underneath and managed by their police department?
No, it's not.
Who's it?
The director is a civilian, it's there, but it's still all funded by the county.
That's interesting. And then I understand that you brought this same budget request, if you will, to the city of Savannah. I saw something at one of their meetings where there was a request for funds or discussion, and I think it was during their budget session. What was the city of Savannah's response to the request from animal control? Or was there a response? Do you recall?
To my knowledge, we have not received a response on that, and I'm not sure what the status is at this point.
And didn't you give that presentation like months and months ago?
That was primarily pertaining to a new ordinance involving chicken and bees, was it?
Something totally different.
Yeah.
But you did give the presentation about the additional staff.
Well, in that setting, yes, but it was a different environment that we were
They
talking
were saying they would need additional staff to respond to the new ordinance. Yeah. Commissioner Sinner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You got some powerful backup that stood up here today, calling for backup officers. And maybe I can ask you, Chief,
Yes, sir.
and to give you a roundabout, we're kind of in a conundrum that we're going to solve, but, we got a negotiation with the city going on regarding the police department, regarding the recorder's court, all this merges together. We've got to do a budget probably before that gets resolved. Why couldn't you just assign additional officers? I mean, are you restricted? I know this crime to be fought, but he says, I need 2 more officers. Why would that not be a decision that you made within whatever budget? Okay, I'm going to just take 2 out of this division and give you 2 more officers.
Well, primarily because I will get hit pretty hard by residents of this community for diverting police resources to work in the animal control shelter. And we are struggling to maintain the staffing level that we need to answer calls for services pertaining to crime.
Thank you very much. And let me ask you, go ahead, you want to say something, Lieutenant Hill?
Mr. Yeah, just to understand, the animal control officers are not post-certified.
Okay.
So there's the difference. You're talking
I'm
about-
confused, because you're wearing a police uniform.
I am post-certified as a lieutenant of police, and one of my assignments is animal control to manage. But the animal control officers, now they're NACA certified, the National Animal Control Association. They receive certification, but they're civilians. They can write subpoenas and they can issue local ordinance citations, but they cannot make arrest.
All right. And let me ask you also, while you're there, I noticed in your material that you have to go to court sometimes and make cases. So we get the district attorney involved when that's done, when you go to court? That's another expense we pick up. That's not really your expense, though, right?
Right.
But you've got it listed in here. Tell me how that, I'm trying to look for the exact language, what you talked about when you have to go to court and present your case. How does that work into the budget?
The animal control officers write the citations, which are handled every Monday in Recorder's Court on the local ordinance docket at 10 a.m. In the event that there is a need for a special hearing or there are state charges that are brought against an individual, that's when we would involve the district attorney's office in that. For the most part, animal control, unless we have a special situation and we need the help of the city attorney, we represent the city and the county in each of those ordinance violations in Recorder's Court on our own.
Okay, and you're allowed to do that? Nobody's made an objection that you're not a lawyer? You're not allowed to do that?
No one has made an objection to that, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of things that was noted. We had just a tremendous first-class facility, and we're done. That's the drawback when you build facilities with SPLOST funds, with no impact study as to what it will cost to operate it going forward. And that's what you're up against. But this is an issue that we will certainly address, especially when we start our strategic planning with small municipalities and everybody else involved, and see where this floats. But you wanting them to pull officers from crime beats to surge animal control when the complaint or the request may be in Pooler, Bloomingdale, Thunderbolt, any municipality with the exception of Tybee. And so it's a lot more complex than just saying that, but we understand that this whole issue, Marine Patrol, Animal Patrol, all is 100% funded by the county, will all have to be addressed when we renegotiate the agreement that hasn't yet gotten underway, but it will soon. And so it's complex. And then we have a participant out there that we are subsidizing. And when I say subsidizing, the Humane Society that don't pay their lease. If they paid their lease, you could take that money and fold it over into animal control. But we have a lot of issues to address when it relates to animal control. So not only are we funding this operation, we are also partially funding the Humane Society by providing them with facilities. So there's a lot that the county has undertake, and the taxpayers have to appreciate that. And then we'll have at some point ask them if it's really how you want to spend your money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.